Hi and welcome back. If you have been watching this channel for a while, you know I am a pretty huge Destiny 2 fan. I have played it since it came out, I put over 9,000 hours into it, and I overall just really enjoy the game. And as such, whenever there's a new expansion that comes out, I find it enticing to talk about. Of course, if you've also played the game yourself, or maybe you still play it, you know that it's in a bit of a rough spot right now, to say it lightly. It has not been going too well for the game. And as such, I do still want to cover it, even though it's not necessarily going to be the most positive videos, there are elements of it that's good. I feel like overall when you see this community, you get a lot of videos where it's going to be like Destiny bad, or Renegades bad, or it's universally Destiny good, Renegades good, there's nothing wrong, just stop complaining. It's either or always. And I find that that is not necessarily the truth. An expansion like Renegades very much is a middling experience. There are elements of it that are incredible. High highs and low lows, right? And I wanted to talk about those today. So let's get right into it. Also very quickly, this video is recorded before the dungeon comes out. I haven't played it, I don't know anything about it, so could it be good? Yes. Could it be bad? Yes, I simply do not know. Just thought I'd mention it before we move forward. So, what is Renegades? Well, Destiny 2 Renegades is the crossover between Destiny 2 and Star Wars, which I find myself not being a fan of Star Wars while I'm a pretty big fan of Destiny, so I still wanted to check it out. And what I found was a pretty big mixed bag. There are elements of this expansion that are really fun. I love the new weapon type, the dynamic heat weapons. I absolutely love the new outpost that you have, like the new social space, and I honestly found myself really enjoying the new activity that was added to the game. However, there are also elements that I find to be pretty bad. There are elements of the campaign where you have to go to a character like literally right next to each other, you have to go and talk to them. There are elements of the campaign where it is just a repeat of other like elements of another mission. There is literally entire rooms from Presage just taken and given a new skin and slapped into the new missions. I'm not quite sure I enjoyed that as much. At the same time, I find that the legendary campaign, because of its, I'd say, difficulty, is kind of a little bit too easy at the moment, because it simply just does not feel challenging whatsoever. And I think that's because one, you're on level now, and it's just all a mixed bag there. I also find that the writing and the overall story is a big mixed bag. Again, not quite Destiny, not quite Star Wars, so we land somewhere in the middle, and I'm not a big fan of that in the middle area. What I mean by that is that while yes, there are elements where you can look at them individually and go, that is Star Wars, that's Destiny, together they just don't mesh that well. The story itself attempts to ham-fist in some of the 9 stuff to just have this sort of Destiny vibe to it, because we are currently dealing with the 9. We were in Age of Fate, with 6 having possessed Regent Baal, our version of like Darth Vader's like body or some shit, and it's kinda interesting, but at the same time it falls flat on its head, because Bungie have gone back to forgetting how to write a story. In here, we don't fight Baal, even though I really wish we did. He kinda escaped after we take off one of his arms in a cutscene. However, you do get to fight the big old Cabal guy that only shows up in one other mission, that being at the very beginning of the game. It makes no sense. Why is it written like this? Like I said, it feels like they have all of these ideas and they wanted them all to fit together, and they just didn't fit, because you have this big Cabal who's supposed to be this military guy, and he's supposed to, you know, be out here and lay the law, you know, he's supposed to be the general and all of that stuff. And he shows up in one mission and then the final mission, and that's it. Whereas Regent Baal, the big bad, the one that you get all of the interactions with throughout the entire game, our stand-in, but Darth Vader, we see him a few times throughout the story, we talk to him quite a lot and we get to know him quite well, just for him to lose his arm and fuck up for the rest of the story. It makes literally no sense to me. And when it comes to the 9 plotline, we haven't really progressed anything. Now we know there's some prophecy, we already knew that before. The prophecy hasn't really progressed at all. We have talked a little bit with 6, one of the 9 members, and that's it. I'm not a fan of that ending at all. The 9 have always like been really interesting to me. Like, there's never been a time where I didn't want to hear more about them, just like there hasn't been a time where I didn't want to hear more about the Dragons. So it's a shame to see the ball being dropped when it comes to these storylines, especially because Edge of Fate, even though I disliked the design of the campaign and I hated the endgame and I hated the changes it came with, it at least had a pretty good story. It set up the rest of the chapters pretty well. I was actually interested. And here they completely kind of fumbled that interest in their attempt to both do Star Wars and Destiny at the same time. And while this inspiration does flow through the entire expansion, I can't say I always like it. There are elements of it I like. As an example, I am a huge fan of the new dynamic heat weapons. I think they're really cool, and I think it's really cool how they're implemented. I really do think they fit very well into Destiny. I also overall like the Praxic blade, the lightsaber in other words, quite a lot. However, there is this issue that the sound effect is one-to-one the ones from Star Wars, which I'm not a big fan of. I would much rather have had them do their own unique spin on it, you know? Don't just copy their homework, do something with it, try something, and I know there's a good chance that Bungie simply couldn't do that because of the licensing and all of that stuff, but I would have honestly really liked to see that. I think doing a unique spin on these already existing things is where this experience could have been really good and really fun. However, it is just kind of copy-pasted in certain areas, and the areas where it aren't, it is just very mediocre Destiny. And I'm not quite sure that is what I was looking for with Renegades. Now, to start off with, I absolutely love the Lawless Frontier content. I think it's very, very fun. Essentially, they are these small objectives that you gotta complete on each planet. They can be transport the cargo from here to here, and this will be a new sort of content. Now, the thing that makes these really fun is the invasions. Essentially, at any given point, a player can invade you and your team. You have 2 other players with you, so you're a team of 3, and 1 invader can invade you. And that invader's goal is to get 5 kills. So he has to kill you, you have to kill him. If you kill him 3 times, he's sent out. And if he kills you 5 times, well, he quote-unquote wins, but he also goes out. He's more of a nuisance than anything, and I find them to be really fun. They are a really good way to spice up the PvE. I love the fact that I can go in between slaying a bunch of Cabal, to then having to go in and then get into a PvP fight with an invader. And I love the fact that health isn't regenning. I think that is a very huge thing, because it means that dipping in and out of cover and playing that game is quite incentivized. It's also the fact that because these are invasions and not just PvP matches, the maps are quite a lot bigger, which means that you can reliably sit on one end of the map sometimes and shoot down on your enemies, taking these flank positions and skipping around and everything. And while that probably is gonna be a meta, currently I've seen that new special ammo hand cannon being used quite a lot, but it's fun. It feels refreshed, it feels refreshing to play, and I really enjoyed that. I think it's a really, really fun activity. I absolutely adore it. And the rewards are pretty good to boot. You get all of the new gear from here, and again, I think the new gear is very well worth getting, the blasters and all the new archetypes. It's a lot of fun, and I really like this activity. In addition to all of that, when you're playing it, you can actually get other rewards. These can be keycards that can unlock other areas of that map for you, where you can loot more chests and get more extractables. It's a lot of fun. Like, a genuinely good job on the content here. This was fun. And I'll even go as far as saying I like some of the story missions. Specifically, there is one that's called Fire and Ice, and it's really, really cool. It is the quest where you get a new exotic. I'm not gonna say anything more than that, and I think you should explore that for yourself. It's an absolutely gorgeous quest, one of the best in the game yet. And unfortunately, it's followed up with an otherwise pretty mediocre campaign. But that one is really, really good. I also really like a lot of the new dynamic heat weapons, like I mentioned. I think they're really fun to play with. And yet I find myself feeling mixed. I think this is mainly because of the visual illusion I think the game has suffered due to this expansion. Obviously, we've had crossovers before. However, it wasn't until we started to get Star Wars crossovers that it was one-to-one a rip from another medium, not attempted to be Destiny-fied in any way. It was just taken the direct skin and then slapped into the game. And what that means is that you're now playing a game where you will see characters from Star Wars running around. And it already kind of fucked with me a little bit before, but now where we have ballasters that have the sounds from Star Wars, we have had beeping from Star Wars from the R2-D2 droids and all that. We have had the lightsaber with the lightsaber sounds from Star Wars. I gotta be honest, I'm feeling a little bit diluted. There's a little bit too much pollution in here. I can't quite see where the Star Wars ends and where the Destiny begins. And there's always been a level of inspiration from Star Wars, obviously, in Destiny. We have the Stormcaller subclass that is literally Emperor Palpatine. I'm pretty sure anyway. And yet I don't really enjoy this quite as much. I want Destiny for Destiny. I don't want all of these other inspirations to sort of take the stranglehold in it. And if it does, please Destinyfy it. Make it into something that stands out uniquely in Destiny. The Witch armor did that really well, where it was armor inspired from The Witcher. However, it was made into being Destiny 2 armor. It fit into the game. This is what is needed if we want to have these sort of crossovers. Because when we just have something taken one-to-one from another IP, it dilutes the entire game visually. And I think that takes away quite a lot from the overall experience of playing Destiny, which is a massive shame. And I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons why I'm sitting here with this feeling of either apathy or just a little bit of disappointment in there. Because I don't like the fact that it isn't being adapted into Destiny, that it is just one-to-one. I'm not a big fan of that entire idea. And to me, it's not something I can escape from if I want to play Destiny, because now these weapons are out there. I can't just pretend to not see the armor anymore. I will get to hear the gun blast. I will probably also play with some of them because they are fun to use. I just don't like how it sort of dilutes the entire game visually. And I think the reality is when I am playing Destiny, then I want Destiny. If I wanted a Star Wars experience, I'd go and play the great Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order games. Hell, even Star Wars The Old Republic. I love all of these games, and I think there are enough mediums from Star Wars. If you want to go and experience Star Wars, you should go and play Star Wars. And if you want to do and experience Destiny, then play Destiny. And I don't like the fact that they'll be mixed together like this. It's never been a thing for me. And maybe that is me as somebody who doesn't enjoy both franchises, but only really enjoys one that sees it like that. Or maybe that is a general feeling more people have. I'm not quite sure. And if that was all I had to say about the expansion, that would sort of end the video here. However, it is not. Because you see, last expansion at the Edge of Fate, we got a complete overhaul to how we interact with the game. And that is still very much in place today. The portal still exists and it hasn't changed one bit. I absolutely still hate this interface. Think it's ugly, boring, bad. It is the Netflix slideshow of Destiny content. And I just don't like it as much as I like the director. The director had a little bit of personality. It wasn't always the most user-friendly, but it was a part of the universe, a part of the experience, if you will. And I don't like this mobile-ass menu to navigate around my game. And it's something that seems simple, but I think it has a profoundly great impact, especially because half of these contents, even within the specific thing that is made to be played with other people, the Fireteam Ops playlist, is all only doable solo. Meaning that unless you have a pre-made team or you have friends that you can meet up with, you can't matchmake in this. It makes no sense. We had an entire Strike playlist before that was fully match-made. And I don't understand why these things had to go. I don't understand why we decided to go to the portal system. I guess it was to make it easier for people. That is what Bungie said. However, it isn't easy. It is still a fairly hard game to get into because the new play experience is still one of the worst in gaming. You see, when you start Destiny out originally, there was this entire campaign called the Red War that would guide you through getting your subclasses and it'll guide you through how you use them and so on. However, as time progressed, that got removed along with Forsaken. And that was the sort of two free-to-play campaigns we had. You could play at least Red War for free and for a little bit Forsaken too. And they got removed with the content sunsetting. And that has sort of left an entire vacuum for new players. Bungie decided to do the absolute minimum of now you spawn in and you talk to a NPC called Shohan, and that's it, then you're just kind of left out there. Good luck, buddy. Whereas before you had an entire campaign to guide you structurally through it. I think if we really want to see new players come into this game, we would absolutely and most certainly need an update to the new player experience. How should that be done, you might ask? Well, my idea would be to make one or two of the campaigns free, and then simply give people the quest to complete their campaign, unlocking their subclasses throughout as they go. Because at the moment, the reality is you are locked in there, you get 3 subclasses for free with everything in there, and you have no idea what the fuck you're gonna do. Nothing to guide you, just nothing at all. And an update to the directory just doesn't help here. And I think the portal is still a confusing mess even then, because you have all of these different names, and you don't know what the difference is, when the truth is, if you've already completed them once, there is no difference in the loot or the items that you get. The only difference is the length, meaning that there is a exclusively best one to run. As an example, if you're picking from the Pinnacle Ops playlist, you are picking from a bunch of activities who all share the same loot pool. Which means that if you really think about it, what you would most logically do is do the one that is the quickest for the most items. So that's what you do, obvious. And what really ends up happening here is that there's 1 or 2 missions that are exclusively played while the rest is being forgotten. Because there are just 1 or 2 that is much faster than the rest of them. And I think this is an issue overall with the design of the portal. If each activity had unique drops or something tied to them that made them unique, then people would have to play them, they would play them more. But because each activity has a shared loot pool with that overall group of activities, as an example, solo ops and fireteam ops, and I think mostly all crucible ops all have the same loot pool, and all pinnacles ops have the same loot pool, and so on, it sort of breeds a system where there are just more effective ways of playing, and people are gonna do that. And in Age of Fate, it was a huge issue when you had to level. Now, Bungie decided to remove leveling until they could get it under a better system, at least for Renegades. We don't really know about, the next expansion. They might still tell us to level, they might not, we don't know. However, what it ends up really meaning is that there is no reason to interact with 99% of the content in this game anymore, because they were removed and replaced with a more standardized system, which I absolutely hate. It's taking the social element out of it, and it's not that immersive. And it still is in full effect to this day. The portal hasn't improved in the slightest, in my opinion. There are a slightly more reason to run longer activities now that they give you slightly more rewards, but in the time that you get, as an example, the 3 engrams from a Onslaught run, you could probably run those 3 Caldera solo ops in the same time, get the same drops. It makes no sense. It shouldn't be like this. It really should not. Let the activities have their own loot pool. That makes them evergreen. It means that I might go back to them later on because there is a new role that I'd rather have than the old one that I had. Instead of forcing me into this system where all of the content is just shared loot pools between all of it. I'm not a fan of it at all, as you can hear. And in terms of leveling, the experience is slightly better if you haven't leveled as well. It goes a lot faster. It went from, I think, 150 hours to reach max to like 25, which is pretty good, I'd say. But still, you shouldn't have to level just for them to take away your levels and then demand that you level up again in the next expansion so you can go and do the same things that you could before. This makes no sense and it's really stupid. And overall, that is where I also want to end my review of Renegades. I like the specific Renegades content. There are still a lot of things I want an addression on from Bungie. They need to tell me what they're gonna do with the bonus power from New Gear and all of that. I wanna know what is happening here before I can truly say that I am sold on a new experience for Destiny. I also want to know what they're gonna be doing with the portal. It's clear that it's not working, and most people fucking hate it. Like, we need some confirmation here on these issues before I can safely say that the next big expansion is gonna be interesting to me. But with all of that said, I do want to say thank you for watching. If you've made it this far, thank you a lot. It means the world to me personally as somebody who makes these videos. And also just thank you for sticking around and listening to me. Especially if you don't agree with my opinions, some of the things that I said here. Maybe you think that I am too much of a Bungie dick right now. Maybe you think I hate them too much. Like, who really knows? But at the end of the day, if you stuck around and you bothered to hear me out, thank you. And with all of that being said, I'll see you all in the next one. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.